Our last speaker for the Urban Landscape Summit is Dr. Gail Hansen, and she will be talking about Extension Communications Beyond EDIS, writing books for publication.
Okay, bringing up the rear here and tripping over cords. So actually, I'm not the last one. There's still graduate student awards after I'm done. And I know that there's like a beer over there at First Magnitude with your names on them, but those beers are just going to have to wait for a minute here. So you might be wondering why I am talking about extension communication beyond EDIS today. And so this is why. This is a book that I just published. It's out there, you can get it on Amazon. And my publisher told me that I had to tell you a little bit about this book, because she said, anytime that you are talking to more than 2 people, you better tell them about your book. And that's the marketing that you have to do after you do all the work to write the book. So you can actually get this book on Amazon. And you just go into Amazon Books and type in urban ecology and you'll find it. And when they send it to you, you will have they'll also put a bunch of bubble wrap in there and you can use that on your landscape. So you not only get the book, but you get the bubble wrap too. So that's that. That's what my publisher told me I had to do. And so you might be wondering then, the real reason why I am talking about extension communication today. I have been talking to a lot of our stakeholders and a lot of other specialists and also to Dr. Johnson. And we've been talking about what types of communication that we use in extension. And our big question is who is our stakeholder and how are we communicating with them? So I used to be a them. And so I'm going to be speaking from experience. And what I mean by when I say I used to be one of them, I used to be one of our stakeholders. Just a little bit of my background. I have a master's and a PhD in landscape architecture. And I worked for about 10 years in a landscape architecture office before I came to UF. So that's when I was one of them. So I have experience knowing what landscape architects and planners need as far as communication. And I can tell you that it was not journal articles. Journal articles are really hard to find unless you're in the academic world. So when you are looking for those articles and you are looking for certain types of information, what you need is you need some really well-written documents that kind of distill all the research that's being done so you don't have to go and search for all those articles. And when you are in a landscape architecture firm and you're working on projects, you don't have a whole lot of time to do all that searching. So I wanted to talk about writing for our stakeholders, and books happens to be one of the things that we could possibly be writing for them. So after I worked in a landscape architecture firm, I moved on to UF and I was hired as a research scientist and a lecturer in the landscape architecture department. And in that department, I started writing a lot of documents because that's one of the things that we do there. And unlike, we don't do as much research there, unlike you guys who are writing a lot of journal articles, which I'm sure almost all of you have done. We used to get grants for writing documents, basically. So I have a lot of experience in writing documents. As an example, I'll tell you about one project that I worked on was the Marjorie Harris Carr Cross Florida Greenway. We had a grant from the Office of Greenways and Trails. It was about a 2.5 million grant. And that grant was basically to write 3 different documents for the Greenway. One of them was for their recreation, nature-based recreation. The other one was for their education and interpretation program. And then the last one was for their land management. So we spent 3 years, 3 very fun years, tromping around the Greenway, riding bikes, walking, riding horses, on canoes and everything, exploring the Greenway and writing these documents for them. So I have a lot of experience writing different documents for different organizations. And then when I came here to I'm in the Environmental Horticulture Department now, and so I am now in Extension. So I've come full circle because now I am writing documents for those landscape architects, one of them that I used to be. And so it's kind of funny because I can put myself back into that position of sitting in the office and thinking, what do I need? What information do I need? And I write that document for them. So let's talk a little bit about these documents for Extension. How many of you have written an EDIS publication? So just about everybody. So you're very familiar with those. How many of you have written a book? So a few of you have. And I know Andrew back there, he's written books for about trees and so forth. How many of you have written technical reports? So a few of you have written those. So we have people that have some, experience with these different documents. But I also want to talk about documents that we call like action plans or guidelines or strategic approaches or adaptation strategies or practitioners' handbooks. Those are the kind of documents that we used to search for when we were looking for information, when we were one of those stakeholders sitting out there in our offices. These are the keywords that we look for because we know that those are going to be documents that are going to be like a synthesis of all this research that we're going to be able to look through really quickly and find the information that we need. So there's a picture. I want to see if I can use this really cool light thing. Right there. There's me out in the field. And that was when I was working in the office. And I'm talking to the contractors there. And I actually, that was back in the day, I was trying to tell them that they had their grades all wrong for their stormwater pond. Trying to fix the problem right out there in the field. But I put this particular document up here because it is a document from the University of Wisconsin Extension. I think it's an excellent document, and I think it is a good model for the kind of documents that Extension should be writing. And these were, where's that like? These are the keywords, principles, practice, that drew me to that document. This is one of the documents I used when I was writing my book. And those keywords are the ones that tell you that they're going to be talking about principles that you can use. They're going to be talking about things that you can put into practice. And in this case, we have a chapter in our book on placemaking. So that's the other reason why I grabbed onto this document. But this document is 56 pages long. So it's a lot longer than an EDIS publication, but it's not quite a full book. And that makes it perfect. It's a perfect document to go through very quickly and find what you're looking for. And those are the kind of documents that I'm hoping that we can start producing in Extension. And I'm, if the University of Wisconsin Extension can do it, we can do it. And I don't know how exactly their publication works there. I think that if we were to write a document that's 56 pages, we'd probably have to go through the IFAS bookstore. Which is not quite as bad as going through another publisher, but I think that the good thing about this type of document is that we aren't forced into that format that our EDIS publications are forced into. Because I think some of you who have written EDIS publication have probably discovered that that template that we have to use makes it a little hard to work with those. So let's talk a little bit about books first, because I have actually, since I wrote this book, gotten a lot of questions from people about how do I go about publishing a book because I have a sabbatical coming up and I'm going to write a book. Well, that's sort of how I got onto this. So the way that this happened is I got a professional endeavor professional development fellowship from the Australian government. So I went over to Perth and I was working with Dr. Jocelyn Macedo, who is my co-author on this book. She was the head of the School of the Built Environment at Curtin University in Perth. And I knew her because she used to be the chair of the Urban and Regional Planning Department here at UF. So I was good friends with her and she was my sponsor over there. And so with this fellowship, they told us you have to write a project or do a project of international significance. I was like, and we're like, wow, okay, what are we going to do? International, that means it has to go out to a lot of different people. And it has to be relevant to a lot of different people. So we said, okay, let's just write a book. Good thing that neither of us had written a book before, because we probably would not have done that if we had known. So, you know, sometimes it's good to be a little naive, I guess, about things. And we decided that we wanted to write a book about urban ecology because both of us have enough of a background to write. And also I'll talk about how our book was going to be different. And so we worked with the University Press of Florida. A lot of people have asked me about University Press. It's actually very loosely affiliated with UF. It's not a UF publisher. They publish books. Anybody can publish books with them. University Press is nationwide. And so like here in Florida, they just call it University Press of Florida, just because one of their offices is here. And you see that chart over there that says life cycle of a book? Well, that represents 3 years worth of work to get a book written and published. So books have kind of a pro and a con. The pro is you can put a lot of information in it and you can, your topic can be very specific, but by the time it gets published, it's 3 years later. And so some of that information possibly could be a little bit dated if you want the latest and greatest. The very first step in writing that book, way over here where this light bulb is, I guess that means that's when the light bulb goes on and you get this grand idea. But that's the proposal. And you have to write a proposal first. University Press generally gets about 2,000 or more proposals a year, and they only publish between 90 and 100 books a year. So, you know, that's the first thing you have to do is get your proposal approved. Oh, let me go back real quick on that. And then you take about a year to write your manuscript because it's going to take that long, believe me. When I came back from Australia, I took a sabbatical. It took me the full 6 months and more to write the book. And there's 30 chapters in the book. There's close to 400 pages in here. And it does take a while to write it. And actually, you don't get full approval on that book until the board, which is right here, this big check. After you've written the manuscript and everything, then they finally give you the approval to be published. So you got to do all the work first. And then the next year it spends here, let me get this right here. Right here, the second year, that's all the copy editing, the page proofs and everything. And then here, down here, it takes another 3 or 4 months to get out, and then you start doing the marketing. So it's a long process, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. No. I'm saying go for it, actually. Now, actually, what we had to do then was we had to review a bunch of other books on urban ecology. And we looked at about 15 to 20 books, and we had to write a summary report about what was in those books. And this is part of the proposal. And then you have to write how your book is going to be different from your competition. So we asked ourselves, what is missing from the other books that we read that we want people to know about urban ecology? Because a lot of the other books mostly just had the ecology side of that urban and ecology. A lot of them did not have the urban side, which is the people side of the book. And so we wanted to do a book with more social and cultural issues in it. So we were looking at things like biophilia, environmental justice, placemaking and place attachment, beliefs, values, and norms, and policy and legal issues and ordinances and so forth. One of our reasoning was because humans are the dominant biological organism in a city. Cities are built by people, for people, and so their needs need to be met. But one of the greatest needs of people in cities is to have nature in cities. And so we were trying to tie that all together. When you look at that diagram there, that we submitted that with our proposal, and we were told that that diagram is what got us the go-ahead on the proposal. So we were looking at ecology and the environment as the foundation. Those are the first few chapters. And then you see the column on the social issues there. These each represent a chapter, and the cultural issues. And then we tied it all together and said, with all the, with all these issues, this is what affects our landscape behaviors, our residential landscapes, our sustainable neighborhoods, and our healthy neighborhoods. So, so that was our process, and that was how we got our proposal accepted and got the book published, written and published. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what are some of the other things to think about and the other types of documents that we should be writing in extension for our stakeholders, because we have actually identified more stakeholders than just our homeowners. And, you know, the stakeholders are people like builders and developers and landscape architects and planners and so forth. They're those kind of upstream stakeholders that Paul was talking about the other day. And so we need to have some different type of document to reach them. And I've been talking to this with Dr. Johnson also about, you know, what kind of different documents can we do? So basically, they have to be useful documents, kind of like, duh, yeah, they have to be useful. But I'm thinking about useful in a different way, because I have read a lot of unuseful documents. And so when we're talking about useful here for our stakeholders, it means that we're taking our science and we are turning it into action items that they can do. And so we need to make it relevant to the needs of our stakeholders. And it needs to be real world solutions, doable actions by them, and you know, translating certain principles and strategies and so forth. So this is one document that I wanted to highlight because it has all the key words in it. Nature-based solutions, handbook, practitioners, an independent expert report. Those are all the key words that we use when we're looking at these documents that we want to use in ours. This was another one that I used to help write the book. A couple more that I used were local biodiversity strategy, action plan, guidelines, aid to municipal planning. So, you know, looking at these, and these are all developed by very reputable international agencies like the Convention on Biological Diversity or Local Governments for Sustainability. One of the things I wanted to point out on this particular one over here is it was written by a landscape architecture land planning firm, but they also had a faculty member from the Urban Landscape Lab of Boston Architectural College, helping them produce that document. And a couple of other things to point out. This was actually a draft urban ecology and biodiversity strategy for the city of Melbourne. And they had some tables in this document. And one of the very interesting things was they had a list of who their partners were and who they were going to work with and who they were going to consult with. And you can see here in their consultant, universities. So they have a very strong connection with their universities, and they're the first people that they list as their consultants or people that they're going to work with to develop this draft urban ecology and biodiversity strategy. And same thing here. I don't know, we found a lot of incredible, very useful documents out of Australia. And I think that's because they are very, very environmentally oriented over there. This one here for the city of Sydney, their landscape code, another really great document. And I wish that our cities would write more landscape codes just like these. It's almost impossible to find on some of our city websites landscape codes and well-written documents. And we did a big search not long ago for just cities here in Florida and had a really difficult time finding, codes like this. I'm in the question. So I just wanted to point out a couple more documents that I've actually written and worked with students on. This one here is with the Pinellas County, Florida Friendly Landscape Design Guidelines, and this is for their neighborhood stabilization program. So it was for low-income neighborhoods. Did a document for them, but they have also passed this document on to a bunch of other counties for to use in their low-income neighborhoods. This is a document that we wrote. We partnered with the Tampa Bay Water and the Florida Water Star, and it's a landscape pattern book that has low, medium, and higher cost landscapes. All of these documents I wrote with students who I hired as OPS positions, and then sometimes some other like landscape architects that I knew. And all these documents are around between 30 to 60 pages long. Another document that I wrote for the UF Oak Hammock Residential Retirement Community, had another student work on this with me. We wrote this one because it was for a retirement community, and we are actually going to use this and disseminate it to other retirement communities too. And I think this is the last one. We also work with Recreation and Parks departments and working with a LA student here and doing a site plan for a recreation park. It's in a rural area, but surrounded by urban areas. And I'm actually writing the interpretation and education program for that too. Oh, and I was just going to point out this one that Michelle Atkinson, a document that she has written, and I think it's a really good document. So if you want to look at it, an example of a document that actually somebody has written, and I don't think she went through the IFAS bookstore for this. It's just a document that she developed. And if you haven't seen this, take a look at it because it is also a really good document. And I'm done. Oh, we have 2 minutes for questions, but actually I want you to take a really good look at that picture there. It is real. It's very real, but what do you think that is? It's a utility box. A utility box that has been painted to look like that's the landscape on the street there. So the reason why I put that in there is just kind of to tell you that, perception is everything. But I also want you guys to look at this website, Mona Karen. She is an artist, and go to her website, monakaren.com. I'm not going to tell you what's on there, but I think it'll kind of blow you away because there's big things on there that are really cool. Okay, questions, anyone? Wendy?
In today's a print book of that nature that could perhaps live on the internet and be able to be revised and updated as necessary?
So Wendy's question is it prudent and good to go ahead and write a book or write a document like that? And I would say my answer to that would be yes, because when you write these documents, you're writing them with the information in it is going to still be valid. It's a lot of times it's kind of basic but applied information. It's going to be valid for a long time, but it's not that it's you don't always have to order the book. These documents that I wrote, they're available on the internet, so you can go and you can download them. And we are already updating some of them, and then we put the new document in place of the old document. You know, it's just like anything. It's just like a journal article. It's only relevant until somebody else comes along and, you know, does some more research and says, oh, this isn't relevant anymore. So. Mhm.